They sent us up to the weather station in early November, just me and Calvin. We were told it would be a short rotation, 3 weeks, maybe 4, collecting upper atmosphere wind data and testing a new barometric drone system. The station was built into the side of a craggy peak in the Selkirks, remote but solid. Solar-powered, reinforced steel walls, satellite uplink, comfortable enough. It was the isolation I was looking forward to. Just snow, sky, and numbers. No noise. We arrived on a Wednesday. By Friday, I started hearing a third voice. It began at night. A murmur. Quiet. Like someone speaking just beyond the door. Not Calvin. I checked. He was out, cold, headphones on. I stepped into the hallway. Nothing. But when I closed the door, it started again. Faint, croaking, repeating. At first, I thought it was the wind. It can do strange things at high altitudes. But the voice didn't move, didn't shift or fade. Just stayed in one place, like it had location, like it was talking. Calvin didn't believe me. Probably the radio catching some backscatter, he said. Military chatter, it happens. That made sense, for a little while. But then it started saying my name. The next night, I woke up to tapping on the window. We were 8,000 feet up. Sheer rock face outside. Nothing should have been able to reach that window. The tapping stopped when I turned on the light. But when I looked, there was condensation on the glass from the outside. In the center of it was a circle drawn in the fog, and inside the circle, a single print. Not a hand, not an animal, more like a starfish made of knuckles. After that, I stopped sleeping. Calvin started acting strange, too. He'd wander out into the snow at night, not answering when I called. Come back pale with vague excuses. Just needed some air. He stopped eating properly. Would stare at the equipment readouts without blinking. Once, I found him sitting cross-legged in the snow, 10 yards from the station, whispering to nothing. Just the phrase. It was never just the two of us. He didn't remember saying it. I tried to radio for evac. The system was operational, full signal, steady power, but no one answered. The logs showed no record of my transmissions, but something was responding on the other end, repeating my voice. On the 11th day, I caught a glimpse of it, just for a second. We were checking the relay dish on the roof during a whiteout. Calvin slipped, shouted, and I turned just in time to see a figure behind him. No color, no face, just a shape, humanoid but off, like a smear of static in the snow. Then it was gone. Calvin didn't see it, or said he didn't. But that night, I heard his voice calling from outside, begging me to let him in. He was sitting right next to me. We stopped going outside after that. The creature, or whatever it was, circled the station nightly. I could hear it scraping across the walls, mimicking us, learning the tones of our voices, the rhythms of our steps. It even laughed once, but not quite right, too sharp. It started knocking on the door. Always 3 knocks. We barricaded everything, sealed vents, disconnected the comms, but it kept trying, kept whispering, kept inviting itself in. 2 nights before extraction, Calvin vanished. I woke up and his bunk was empty. Boots gone. Outer door slightly ajar. There was a trail of footprints in the snow leading out toward the tree line, but they weren't all his. Some were deeper, wider, like hands had been walking beside him. I waited 36 hours. Didn't sleep. Didn't eat. I just sat in the comms room with the lights on and the emergency beacon running. And then, just before dawn, The door opened. Calvin walked in, smiling, dry. No frost on his coat, no snow in his boots. He was humming. Something slow, something I'd never heard him hum before. I asked where he'd been. He looked at me, head slightly tilted, like he wasn't sure what the question meant. "It was never just the two of us," he said, and smiled wider. "I'm back now. They say Calvin was never recovered, that I was found alone in the station, that the records show no trace of a second man making it out. They tell me the hallucinations were due to altitude sickness, stress, isolation. I don't argue, but sometimes at night, I still hear that knock. 3 slow taps, and when I check the peephole, I see my own face smiling back." People always ask why I do it. Why squeeze through holes in the earth no bigger than your ribs? Why crawl miles underground just to see rock no one else has touched? I never had a good answer, until now. The truth is, I needed to see how deep things go. I just didn't know what else was down there. It was Dan's idea, my best friend since high school. He'd heard about a new cavern system near Echo Ridge, a collapsed mine opened up by a recent landslide, uncharted, undocumented. The kind of discovery cavers dream about. We geared up and drove out there with headlamps, rope, and optimism. The mine entrance looked ordinary, timber-framed, rusted signage. We squeezed through and descended for nearly 2 hours, the tunnels giving way to natural rock. Old shafts widened into vaults, veins of quartz flickering under our lights. Then we found the narrow crack. Dan went first. I followed inch by inch, rock scraping against my chest and back. It opened into a massive chamber. There was a faint sound, clicking, soft, rhythmic, not dripping water, not echo, like something testing its teeth. Dan froze, halfway unhooking his helmet. "Did you hear?" "Yeah," I whispered. We swept our lights around. Nothing, just jagged walls and dust hanging in the beam. Dan shook it off first. "Probably shifting rock," he muttered. We pressed on. The chamber led to a passage that sloped downward at a steep angle. The air grew still. Sound didn't travel right. It felt like our own breathing was muffled. Then I noticed something strange. There were bones, small ones, scattered along the walls. Rats maybe, but too many. Arranged oddly, like they'd been placed. Dan noticed them too. "Natural predators don't make patterns," he said uneasily. We argued about turning back. I said we should mark the point and log it. Dan wanted to explore just 10 more minutes. I relented. After 5 minutes, we entered a low tunnel that forced us onto hands and knees. The clicking sound returned. Closer. Dan paused. "That's not rock." Then, something answered. Not words. A dry, breathy sound from behind us. I spun around. Just stone and the narrow passage we'd come through. But then, I noticed the air felt different, like it was being pulled. I whispered, "We need to leave, now." Dan nodded. We backed out fast, trying not to panic. The light from my helmet flickered. I slapped the side. It steadied, but in that split second, I saw something crouched behind Dan. Thin, pale, eyes like polished stone. Its limbs bent the wrong way, like it had forgotten how to be a person. And it was smiling. Dan? It was gone when he turned. We didn't talk, we just ran. Back through the tunnel, the chamber, up the rope. But the walls felt closer now, the air heavier. Like the cave knew we were leaving and wasn't happy. We made it to the original mine shaft when Dan stopped. I dropped my pack. He gasped. "We're not going back," I said. "Forget it." He shook his head. "The SAT beacon's in there. Our emergency beacon. No signal underground, but we'd set it to ping once we emerged. If something happened, no one would know we'd been there." Dan turned to go back. I grabbed his arm. "Please don't." He hesitated. Then something moved behind him. Just a shadow. And then he was gone. Yanked backward into the dark like a rag doll. I ran. I don't remember how I made it out. Just daylight, collapsing outside the entrance, vomiting into the dirt. They never found Dan. I told them the shaft collapsed behind us. They believed me. But last week, I got a package. No return address. Inside was Dan's helmet. And something else. A scrap of paper, smudged and damp. Only 4 words. "It's learning to climb." I inherited the cabin from my grandfather. Didn't even know he had one until the letter came. Just a brittle deed and a scribbled note. "Don't fish the lake. Don't swim in it. Stay inside after dark." He was the type people described as off. A recluse. Talked to radios that weren't plugged in. Told stories about shadows in the forest. The family mostly pretended he didn't exist. But I was broke, between jobs, and the cabin was paid for. So I went. The place sat at the edge of Blackwater Lake. A name that turned out to be unsettlingly accurate. The water was dark, still, and perfectly round. Pines grew in tight around the shore, like a ring of silent watchers. No neighbors, no cell reception, no bird song, just quiet. Too quiet. On the second evening, while unpacking gear on the porch, I saw a fox come out of the woods, skinny, hesitant. It padded down to the lake and stood at the edge, sniffing. Then it vanished. There wasn't a splash, no struggle, just a sudden jerk, like it had been yanked from beneath by something lightning fast. The surface barely rippled. I ran down with a flashlight, scanned the shore. Nothing. No body. No paw prints in the mud. No sign the fox had ever existed at all. That's when I realized I hadn't seen anything living since I'd arrived. No dragonflies. No minnows. Not even a mosquito. The air smelled wrong too. That night, I couldn't sleep. The lake made sounds, low thumps, soft sloshes. But when I'd rush to the window, there'd be only still water and silence. On the third day, I found a hatch. It was hidden at the far edge of the lake, on a crumbling concrete platform half buried in weeds. The metal hatch in its center was heavily padlocked, rusted over. No markings, no obvious purpose. Later, back in the cabin, I pried up a loose floorboard and found my grandfather's journal. Most of it was nonsense, pages rambling about the trade and the pact. But one entry stopped me cold. It waits. It listens. It only takes when it's hungry. And now it's always hungry. I tried to satisfy it. I tried. But I'm just one man. There was a map tucked in the back, and names scrawled beside certain spots around the lake. All marked with red X's. All with dates. Some recent. That night, I stayed up, watching the lake from the darkened cabin. Just after 2 a.m., I saw the water begin to glow. A pale, greenish pulse from deep beneath the surface. Something surfaced briefly. Not clearly. Just the impression of mass beneath the water. It glided with a silence that felt intentional. A shape too large to be a fish, too graceful to be a machine. I stepped back. That's when I saw the wet footprints on the dock. Small, human, leading from the lake toward the cabin. I locked the door and didn't move until morning. I left the next day. Told myself I imagined it. Told myself the lake was just strange, like so many wild places are. Told myself I was just stressed, alone, tired. But the sounds followed me. At night, in my apartment, I hear dripping where there is no leak. I dream of dark water sliding over my skin, of something brushing past my ankle. And last week, when I opened my freezer, every bag of food was soaking wet, as if it had been submerged. I shut it, waited, told myself I was imagining things again. But the worst part wasn't the water. It was what I saw underneath the ice tray. Pressed into the frost-covered plastic, barely visible unless you knew to look, was a small, perfect footprint. Wet, human,